listen to?
Hi friends, my name is Amber. That over there is my cat Kova. He's a big sleeper. He'll probably be here for the duration of the video. But I'm Amber. This is my fancy schmancy microphone courtesy of the academic institution at which I attend. And this is a deep dive into Monster High and its effects on young girls and tweens. Both the good and the not so good effects that it has on young girls and tweens. For this particular video, it's actually an assignment. And I thought, like all other Gen Zers do, if I'm gonna put so much effort into something, why not post it on the internet? Why not? Why not post it on the internet? So here I am posting on the internet. I'd like to thank my instructor. We're gonna call her Dr. H, as to not put people's identities on the internet, because that's bad. Thank you, Dr. H, for giving me this assignment and giving me a vehicle to get out of my online shell. I appreciate you. To start things off, we should talk about one Bram Stoker's book, Dracula. This book was published in 1897 and was among the first popularized vampire stories. However, the novel didn't get particularly popular until the 1920s, but that's kind of irrelevant. I wanted to specifically focus on Holly Black's introduction to this book and how she kind of introduces everything. She states that Stoker's novel humanizes the vampire and depicts the titular character as, quote, more than just a vampire. That's right, folks. You heard it here. You heard it right here. We are humanizing vampires and other monsters. We should remember that for later. It's important for the deep dive, you know. I'm going to find a section in this book and read it to y'all. Dracula is often thought of as being the first work of fiction where a vampire is presented as something more than just a monster. In fact, Dracula was actually predated by such stories as Polidori's The Vampire and Le Fanu's Carmilla. But once it was published, it captured the popular imagination more firmly than anything that had come before. Already a much praised novel in its time, Dracula has continued to influence each successive generation's perception of the vampire. Although vampire folklore exists all over the world, every culture seems to share the powerful combination of desire and fear for the dead to return from the grave. It is Stoker's vampire that remains the best known. So, that's some context for everybody. This is Dracula. Very important to the Monster High bit. Black also says in this introduction that Stoker's Dracula went on to influence vampire media for decades, and now, even still. From Stoker's descriptions of the Count to the weird way they prey on humans, we can attribute almost all of our vampire media today in part to Stoker. One such popular media is Monster High. My beloved Monster High. Alright, sorry about that. Had to put in the intro. A little bit of a musical break. Anywho, in Monster High, Draculaura, the daughter of Dracula, is among the central characters. There's really a lot to unpack with her, so I'll explain kind of the gist of her story real quick. So she isn't actually Dracula's biological daughter. Her biological father was this Roman soldier guy named Gaius, and he was killed in battle as he was a Roman soldier, you know, as they do. Anyways, after Gaius's death, apparently, Gaius's great-grandfather, I believe, was good friends with Dracula. So Dracula took it upon himself. He's like, hey, I'm gonna take care of Gaius's pregnant widow, Camille, who was obviously pregnant with Draculaura. Draculaura being named after Dracula because Dracula saved them. It's a little bit weird. So Dracula goes to attend some business in Rome, as people do, and a plague wipes out a ton of humans, including Draculaura's mom, Camille. Drac returns to this hellscape and a very sick Draculaura, and turns her into a vampire to save her life. This use of vampirism as a means to save people's lives is not new at all by any means to the Monster High canon. Think Twilight, where Edward turns Bella so she may live through the birth of her vampire child. There's a really big problem with this common plot point in the female vampire story. That problem being it takes away the woman's agency to choose for herself whether or not she wants to be a vampire. The logical solution of these male vampires is, oh, this woman's gonna die? Okay, we'll make her a vampire. Are we gonna ask her? No, why would we do that? This speaks to the larger predatory and patriarchal nature of the male vampire, which comes up in Stoker's Dracula as well. Dracula, in Stoker's novel, not Monster High Dracula, in Stoker's novel, he does in fact turn 4 women into vampires, including the 3 brides of Dracula, Verona, Illyria, and Marischka, in addition to Lucy, who's a friend of Mina Harker, the wife of the main character. However, it's important to note that in the animated film Why Do Ghouls Fall in Love, Draculaura does break away from this patriarchal tradition of vampire stories. In this movie, Draculaura's old boyfriend, Valentine, from some 400 or so years prior, shows up at Monster High after being called by the main running antagonist Toralei to disrupt Draculaura's relationship with Claude Wolfe, Claudine's brother. Presumably older brother, but not entirely sure on that one. Valentine's whole deal, it's really odd. He makes girls fall in love with him, and then steals their hearts to add to his really weird trophy collection. Draculaura is said to have the biggest heart of them all, so Valentine absolutely jumps at the opportunity to add her heart to his growing collection. A lot of other stuff is happening around this situation, like Claude and Cupid getting accidentally shot with Cupid's arrows and falling in love. But that is kind of unimportant to the larger point I'm making here, being that male vampires are predatory in media. But how does this Monster High film subvert that cliche to convey a larger message? Well, throughout the film, Draculaura's friends band together to try to stop the spell Valentine has put her under. In the end, they're able to free Draculaura from the clutches of the spell to get her back with Claude. This rejection of Valentine after Draculaura is freed from the spell fights back against the somewhat racist system within the Monster High universe, where monsters kind of pair off with monsters of their same race in a really heteronormative way. It's like, oh, you're a male vampire, I'm a female vampire, we should be vampires together. And it applies to all the other types of monster, the werewolves, the water people, the zombies, to an extent. Yeah, kind of just everybody's like, yeah, let's be racist. Anywho, here in this larger story, Draculaura turns away from that ordeal and gets with Claude, who's a werewolf, which also subverts the vampire versus werewolf trope that is all over occult media. Again, think Twilight. This whole situation points out the problematic nature of this system. Another Monster High film, 13 Wishes, centers around Laguna Blue, who's a saltwater fish girl who ends up wishing herself to be the perfect freshwater girlfriend. This erases key parts of her identity and her character, her sporty nature and her outspokenness, and trades them out for stereotypical traits of the subservient woman. The wish also changes her entire physical appearance. Laguna's new form is rejected by her friends and her boyfriend, which teaches her a valuable lesson, and she ends up changing back into herself. Her normal saltwater fish girl self. What lessons do these two stories teach young girls? That patriarchal, racist, sexist structures in our society are not good for us. These stories teach girls to be themselves and to have agency over themselves. Humanizing monsters, think back to Drac and Bram Stoker. Humanizing these monsters by giving them stories about real stuff, like wanting to fit in and being teenage girls. Makes monsters a great vehicle for sending these messages to girls. The monstrous element is fun, new, and interesting, and the social aspect of it all is super important. However, Monster High is, of course, a marketing giant and a capitalist franchise designed to sell. It's all about the branding. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and through its marketing, some questionable messages are being sent to young girls. Monster High dolls, for the most part, are scarily skinny. Like, really, really skinny. And eerily perfectly beautiful. The sexualization of these otherwise liberated characters dampens the message, as the sexualization still falls within the patriarchal standards of beauty for women that we're trying to subvert. The patriarchal standards for women. Also, the characters in Monster High engage in very stereotypically girlish activities, and not much else, such as shopping, gossiping, doing their makeup, stuff to that realm. These activities that our ghouls partake in teach the little girls watching that to be a teenage girl or a woman is to shop and be a consumer. Also another point is that the number of dolls that were put out in the first wave of Monster High was insane and promoted an unhealthy amount of purchasing and consumption of product. Girls wanted to collect all the versions of their favorite characters. I know I did. I wanted every single Rebecca Steam doll. All of them. I wanted them all. That obviously did not happen. I only had 2, I think, out of the 12. But the number of them that came out certainly made me want them more and more. Monster High also made young girls want to grow up faster and engage in mature types of play. I won't show the videos because they have the faces and voices of young children, and I'm not about putting children's faces on the internet, but I watched some YouTube videos of very young girls, both dressing up like the characters who are, portrayed to be 16, 17, 18 years old, even though many of them, like Draculaura, are way older. She's 1600. Yeah, it's the whole bit. Anywho, it makes these girls want to grow up way faster, and these girls are putting on YouTube stories of them playing with the dolls, acting inappropriately, and acting out gruesome, bloody stories with their dolls, which many folks would find to be inappropriate, along with the dressing up like these later teens aged people, characters, monsters. Let's recap so far. Monster High has had both a positive and negative effect on young girls, teaching them the importance of standing up for themselves against would-be male abusers, and the importance of individuality, but also very expressly teaching them how to be a teenage girl or woman through the lens of a good consumer in our current society, and that super skinny teenagers are freaky fabulous. In that way, Monster High is fairly problematic, but I think the messages in the films about being yourself and standing up for yourself and acceptance are good to teach young girls too. But what I struggle with is, does the good outweigh the bad? I'm not really sure. I know that the 3rd generation reboot of Monster High tried to at least address the issue of all the characters being picturesque teenage girls through the incorporation of more diverse body types among the wide cast of characters, but that got a ton of backlash too. Arguably more backlash than the original characters being super skinny. I personally don't know how to find the middle ground here, because developing dolls who represent young girls is such a difficult task, especially monster stories that already have a variety of preconceived notions, cliches, and rules. Is Monster High even a good idea? Well, it's sold, so I'm sure Mattel thinks it was a fantastic idea, and the girls who grew up with it, like me, loved it. So, great idea, but are the subliminal messages worth it to create this attractive product? Again, I don't know. I genuinely do not know. Anyways, this has been a small deep dive into Monster High and its influence on young and tween girls. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that I did this right, Dr. H. Bye!
Monsters, so bizarre. M-O-N-S-T-E-R. Monsters, yes we are. Monster. she monster high. The party never touched.